if people work together, that actually we can make anything possible. The DRL is a space for experimentation. It's a place where people come to who want to sort of expand the definition about what architecture can be. We work in a way which is really about trying to explore ideas, trying to see how architecture can participate in many different sort of fields. We try to look at the issues around computation. We try to explore ideas about the future of culture and the future of living and the future of work. The students that are coming here, the faculty, all believe that design is very important. We're unapologetic about the fact that we believe that architecture is really a way of thinking about problems, and through space as an interface, we explore these ideas through the making, through the production, through the thinking, conceptualization, and the delivery of what we're sort of speaking about as design research.
The DRL is a platform where like-minded people come together to challenge the architectural discipline. I think that it is quite a unique place, especially for postgraduates, because it allows for a comprehensive design research on materials and computational design tools that really allow you to go in depth into what architecture really means beyond just building and beyond just the physical.
I mean, the history of the DRL started, I think, primarily with the advent of digital tools. And in the late 90s, it was one of the first programs that was really sort of bringing back, I think, a certain kind of culture of digital design and experimentation, like the Architecture Machine Group and other things at MIT and other places. Fundamentally, it was really looking at continuous surfaces and digital tools and really starting to think about how the work environment and culturally things were actually changing because of these technologies. As the program has evolved and the way that we structure it, reinventing itself every 3 or 4 years, the challenges, the idea of how architecture could be materialized in the world, the changing of the role of these technologies that have become pervasive in everyday life became a very important part of how we started to critically think how we can sort of participate in a lot of things, from housing to working to basically what we consider culture today. So architecture, at the very heart of it, became more prototypical, more scenario-driven. It tried to really start to think about, from the scale of a brick to the scale of urbanism, how we could think about using computational platforms, using ideas of thinking and making as a way to really problematize architecture today. Architecture, fundamentally for us, is really about experimentation and really thinking about how we can innovate and produce, I think, the next generation of young practitioners that could really go out into the world and try to really participate across the board in an expanded idea of what design really is. Yeah, so I came to the DRL when it first was initiated. I was maybe the second or third generation, depending on the definition. And at the time, I think its identity, it was really around trying to explore these new tools. I think as I was sort of exploring that, I think the thing that was the most meaningful thing is actually how people work together and how this sort of challenges, I think, the orthodoxy of who an architect is. Working together, thinking collaboratively, participating, being part of something was a very important part of my experience. So for me, I think fundamentally as being probably the oldest member of the DRL, and seeing the DRL from student to director, I think its value has always been to me about thinking about it as a community, about about really seeing how one can foster the culture of thinking about design and how that can actually bring people together. I think it's really important today more than ever.
I don't think anyone can really imagine what the DRL is until you actually enter the room and look at the things around you and are inspired by the people in the community that surround you, because ultimately, for me, that's what it was. Like, the community and the support system that the DRL has is quite unique, and you can't imagine it until you're really here and you really get to experience it firsthand.
I mean, the DRL is part of, I think, a lineage that people would consider radical or experimental within the world of architecture. And I think fundamentally what that really means is that we demand more. We want architecture really to be challenged. We want it fundamentally to be expanded beyond building, to think about actually how communication technologies, how artificial intelligence, how machine learning, how culture, how we live our lives is very much influencing the contemporary way of how we can think about designing today. And because I think architecture has a deep responsibility to social issues, I think it's a very important tool to be able to communicate with people about how they live, how they want to work, and how they can actually ask more of architecture for themselves. So I think a lot of the things that we're trying to do with the concept of radicality is much more to make it more inclusive, to have people be able to participate, to design systems that are using intelligence as a way to help construct, I think, a more informed way of thinking about architecture. We want architecture, in some sense, to enable people, to allow people to be curious and creative, and in some way to create environments that really offer more.
I feel extremely empowered because I feel like I know how to do a lot of things, and I know how to problem solve in a very broad way. It's a very liberating feeling of knowing that you can do a little bit of everything and have your input in every sort of conversation with other professionals, not only architects but also game developers and engineers, and across all their disciplines you're knowledgeable on the topics. The projects at the DRL are not individualistic. Like, they can only be realized if you're able to collaborate with your teammates and able to sort of like everyone has their interest and delegate different parts of the work in order for the project to become bigger than what it's supposed to be. I think that after the DRL, you leave this place sort of questioning everything that's out there. You are more careful with the things that are being showcased, and you question and you sort of imagine in what ways you can find design opportunities in those things rather than just accepting them for what they are. I think that the DRL really sets up a framework for experimentation, and not only within the walls of the DRL, but even when you step outside, like, your mind is sort of set in those ways. So you begin to question everything and start to imagine how those things can become a design opportunity, or they can be reimagined and retested.
It's kind of important to find your own path. Working in offices, gaining experience is good. Creating your own place may be also necessary. Maybe the models of work or teaching are not there. So just like many of the things that we do on the DRL, you have to invent them. And to invent them, I think, is to be able to be committed to the project of architecture and to find a way to do that. And I think that the students and people, if you see the graduates over the last 20 years, the ones that have really made an influence, took a risk on themselves to find a different model, to propose an alternative. And they had the faith that if they did that, I think that they would find a way. And in many cases, I think, I'm not surprised that a lot of our graduates do very well, because I think in some way they had to find their way. You can ask anything you want. What would you ask?
what do you think about us, the students?
I really do think that you guys are the future. I think it's an opportunity for people to find themselves. I think in some way the power of being given a space to experiment is really fundamentally to challenge yourself. I think what I've tried to do in the DRL is to bring people to help support that and to nurture that, and in some way to create a culture of a place that allows students to really take risk. I think if we want to change the world and make it a kind of better place, we cannot do that just from a place that feels like it doesn't have the responsibility to explore things to its fullest. And I think the idea of doing that together empowers people to actually really be able to do this. So I really do feel like there's a great moment of radicality in society today that needs young people to really push forward. I think that this place is actually a really beautiful place, but it's also very fragile. So I think at the moment when there's difficulty and change, I think young people and students actually really help shape the possibilities for a better tomorrow. So I feel quite optimistic that if people work together, that actually we can